We are so excited about 2021. We're gonna hit the ground running, and we wanna let you guys know about everything we got going on right here at Grace. January 10th, Pastor Craig is gonna be bringing us a message all about vision, who we are and where we're going as a church. You're not gonna wanna miss it. The next weekend, January 17th, we're gonna be starting a 3-week series called Essentials, getting back to the basics of our faith. And meanwhile, over in the Zone, our kids are gonna be learning what it means to pray in a series we're calling Walkie Talkie. We're gonna be going through the Lord's Prayer step by step and teaching the kids, hey, you know what? It's actually really easy to talk to the God who loves us. And if you have middle schoolers and high schoolers, guess what? United is coming back Wednesday, January 13th at all campuses. January 24th through 25th, that's our Groups Experience Weekend because we're kicking off a new semester of groups. So that means you'll be able to ask any questions you have about groups and find a group that's right for you. And finally, ladies, February 26th through the 27th is our annual Beautiful Conference. Now, if you didn't have a chance to go to Beautiful Conference last year, let me just tell you, it is one of the absolute best events we do here at Grace. It's so encouraging, so impactful, so much going on in 2021. We're really excited and we're glad to do it with you together. We're a community, we're a church, and we're here to do what we're called to do, which is to reach Tampa Bay with the love of Jesus.
Come on, let's put them hands together for our King of Kings. We worship you, Lord. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Sing, our God is mighty and marvelous. Put our faith in the name Jesus.
the stillness, calm in all the chaos. You are joyful in the sadness, comfort in the sorrow, close to the broken-hearted. You are, so give me peace, not on my own. In your presence, I find rest in you alone. Take me to the place where I belong. God, you know me and you for me, and you see me through it all. So give me peace. Give me peace. Kindness in the hatred, certain in confusion, sureness in hesitation, faithful in the struggle, guidance when I wander, steady in the crisis. You are, so give me peace, not on my own. In your presence, I find rest in you alone. Take me to the place where I belong. God, you know me and you for me, and you see me through it all. So give me peace. Give me peace. Give me peace. Give me Where would I be without you? Where would I be? Where would I be without you? Where would I be? Where would I be without you? Where would I be? Where would I be without you? Where would I be? Peace, not on my own. In your presence, I find rest in you alone. Take me to the place where I belong. God, you know me and you for me, and you see me through it all. So give me peace. Give me peace. Give me peace.
I've been waiting right, guys, welcome everyone. How y'all doing? My name's Pastor Ralph, and we're excited to be with you. Welcome everyone online. We are so excited today. We're going to be talking about the transformation power of God. How many of you guys know that God can transform a life, right? You know, and it reminds me of, Revelations 12:11. It says, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And our stories have so much power. Our stories, they help us to overcome. Our stories encourage us. And so today we have a couple that's going to share their story. Brian and Stacy Folsom. Let's give them a wild, come on guys, give them a warm welcome. Yeah, come on now. Well, Brian and Stacy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So we're going to dive right in. You know, tell us a little bit about what your life was like before Christ, your BC days.
Well, for me, I actually kind of grew up in a church. Three of my best friends growing up, their father was a pastor. Okay. But when you're young like me and hanging out with pastor sons, needless to say, we kind of sat in the back row and really didn't get the word.
Well, I get it. You got some PKs you're hanging out with. Some of us hung out in church a little bit when we were growing up, and you hear and know about God, but you really don't know him. Like, you don't have a personal relationship. How about you, Stacy? What about you?
My religious upbringing was similar to Brian's, but different in a way where I was baptized and raised in a Catholic church. Went to church every weekend with my mom and grandparents, and by the time around high school came, I started to, shy away from the church and didn't really feel that I understood it or had a connection with it or how to have a relationship with God there.
Right, so a lot of rules, but not a whole lot of relationship there.
Right.
So tell me, what happened? What changed everything that ushered in this relationship with God? We'll start with you, Stacy.
So it was back in 2008. Our son, Chase, he became best friends in kindergarten with his friend Colin. And his mother, Katie, and I, of course, they were best friends and hanging all the time. So she and I quickly became really good friends and hung out frequently together. And, casually throughout, our times together, she would invite us to her church. And, it wasn't anything pushy. It wasn't anything awkward. But it was just a casual church invitation. Hey, would you like to join us tonight at my church? And every time she asked, I knew that I needed to, Brian and I were always trying to find a church, right. But with our different backgrounds, we didn't know what church would be the right fit for us or where to begin with that. But every time she asked, I just would blow her off and say, you know what, maybe not tonight. How about some other time? Right. And so you're basically kind of giving her the stiff arm, but in a gentle way. And many of us have been there. Someone invites us to church. We're like, yeah, maybe not now. But help us understand, like, what happened that, made you finally accept that invitation? So a couple years later, Brian had called me at work and let me know that something tragic had happened in his family. A very close family member of his had confessed to abusing his son, ultimately resulting in his death. Wow. Okay. And this hit Brian and I very, very hard. It was something that really tore us up inside. We didn't understand how anyone, especially a close family member of our own, could do something so horrific to a small child. And so, for days, we just walked around. We tried to work. We had difficulty eating and sleeping, and just were in this heavy, heavy fog. And we just didn't know how to get out of it or what to do with it. Right. So, and I know specifically you had a prayer. You talked about a prayer that you prayed during that time. What was that prayer? Yeah, so a couple days later, we were still in this heavy fog and I couldn't bring myself to be at work any longer. So I went home and I just broke down. And I was crying out to God in my kitchen. I said, God, please, I don't know what to do with this. Right. I don't know what to do with this. I need you to show me what I'm supposed to do with this because I can't take it anymore. Right. And so from then, I called Brian. I let him know that I was home for the day and told him how I was feeling. And it turned out he had been feeling the exact same way.
And so you cry out to God. And how many of you know that the scripture said this way, that God is near to the brokenhearted? He's near to the brokenhearted. And so you cry out to God in that moment, and you let Brian know. What happens next? What transpired next to give you that next step?
So that weekend, actually that following week was back to school time. That weekend was back to school weekend, tax-free weekend, and I, still being as lost as I was, I still needed to be a mother to our children. I still needed to get them ready for the upcoming school year and go get them what they needed.
Right.
So that weekend, I found myself at a mall that I never, ever typically shop at, but I had, for whatever reason it was, I, was at this mall. And you can imagine tax-free weekend, how chaotic it was. So amidst the chaos and crowds of people, I run right into Katie.
Wow.
Right in the middle of the mall.
So this is Katie from kindergarten.
Right. Katie,
is several years later at a mall that you wouldn't normally go to.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so I ran into her, and, of course, we're just making casual conversation. Hey, this is crazy. I never come here. She said the same thing. I never come here either. And so throughout our conversation, like she always does, she's like, you know what? Hey, I know I've asked you this before, but I just was wondering, we're going to church tonight. Would you guys like to go with us? And, the boys will really enjoy it. They can go to their children's ministry, and there's childcare for Lily. And, there's live music and food. What do you say? You want to go? Would you like to go with us tonight? And in that moment, I remember this tremendous wave just kind of wash over me. Wow. And I'd never felt that before, and all the times she had asked me. And I knew in that moment that that day was the day.
That was the day.
And I looked at her and I said, you know what? Yeah, we'll be there. Just tell me what I need to do. And she led the way. And, I went home and I told Brian, I said, listen, Katie invited us to church again. I need to go. I really need to go, and the kids are going with me. I understand if you're not ready yet, but I need to do this. Right. And he said, he's like, well, you know what? I'm not quite ready yet. I said, that's okay. It's not the sort of thing that you can pressure anybody into doing. Right. He's like, but you go. You guys go and tell me how it is. And so we did. We went off to 7 o'clock service, and I showed up and, welcomed by everybody in the parking lot, and I was shown where to park, and I get inside, and I didn't know what to do, didn't know where to sit. Katie took my hand, showed me where to sit, introduced me to a friend. She couldn't sit with me at the time because she was part of our worship team, played the cello back then. So, but as soon as the music started, I felt, this is where I belong. And I'd never felt that before. I never felt that anywhere before. I just felt this tremendous feeling that this is where we need to be. This is our church. Right. I felt at home. And so I remember the service, and Pastor Craig was leading the service, and it was the series was called Who's in Charge Here? So if you guys came to Grace back in 2010, you might remember those. And it was about parenting and disciplining your children. And halfway through the service, it transitioned just slightly, a little bit, just enough to give me a nudge. And he started to talk about child abuse. And he touched on it just a little bit, but it was enough for me to know that God was speaking directly to me through his word. Right. And I knew in that moment, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And so service ended, and Pastor Craig, invited up the prayer team and invited anybody up who was in need of prayer. And I was screaming inside because I was like, are you kidding me? This is a thing? I can just go up there, and this stranger, this couple will pray for me. And I don't remember if I ran or sprinted, but I got up there as fast as I could. Yeah. And this sweet couple, the words that they said and the way they prayed over me and over my family and for the little boy that had passed away, and the words that they said, just, I felt at peace. Mm-hmm. And I felt the weight that I had been carrying around for days was lifted, and that fog was lifted.
Amen.
And I left there just feeling full of joy.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Anybody ever felt that joy before? That weight lifted, guys? Come on now. You know? And so, so here you are full of joy. Your burdens are lifted. You're really feeling this presence of God, and he answered your prayer. So you go home, and I'm sure you're letting Brian know all about it. And so Brian, and I know you weren't ready at the time, but tell us a little bit of what was going on inside of you at that time.
Well, for me, I was fighting demons.
Okay.
And because of that, it made my demons a little bit worse, because I was consuming a lot of alcohol at the time, a lot.
Right.
And that was the only way I could kind of, this is what happened, this is how I'm going to deal with it. And I've dealt with that the same way pretty much all my life, but that really...
That served as your answer at that time.
Yeah.
And here she comes. It's like, let's go to church.
Yeah, she came straight from church like, you got to come to this church.
Right.
You don't even, it's amazing. And I'm thinking, nah, that's not me right now.
Right, I
think I want to go to the bar.
Right, I get it. And so, but you took up on an offer, right?
I did.
A couple of weeks later, you came and joined her at church, and so you guys started to come to church here. When did you accept Christ, though? Like, so you have this story, but when did you actually accept Christ?
So it was about a year, maybe a little less than a year later. It was 2011, and first of all, let me back up. We went to our First Steps class.
First Steps.
We went to the First Steps class, because we just wanted to be part of everything that involved this church. We were all in, both feet. And so we started with our First Steps class, and then we made the decision together to be baptized together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you accepted Christ, went to First Steps, got involved. And here's the baptism picture, guys. I think we have a picture here. Oh, wow, look at that. Pastor Craig taking them down in the water there. Come on, guys, look at that. All right. Yeah, man, look at God. And so your life is changed. God is doing things. And by the way, guys, First Steps, plug, will be later on this month. So if you're interested in First Steps, please let us know and fill out a connection card, and we would love to help you take your next steps at Grace Family Church. All right, but let's go back to you fighting your demons. I mean, because here we are, we're baptized, we're in Christ, we're coming to church, we're here every week, and yet you're fighting your demons. Tell us a little bit more about that, Brian.
Well, it's funny because I've been going to this church 10 years. I've been an usher for 10 years. A lot of you guys probably recognize me at the door over here. Yeah. I've been sober 7.5 years. So 3 years of my 10 years coming to Grace.
Wow. Yeah. Look at God.
Thank you. 3 years of my 7 years, I was actually coming to this church with my demons. Mm-hmm. I was ushering still. I had my demons.
Right.
I'm witnessing stuff on stage. I remember a time Pastor Craig had the ring. It was
the boxing ring?
The boxing ring.
Yeah.
I watched grown men get into the ring knowing that they were going to fight their battles. And I'm thinking, man, that should be me. But yet here I am, an usher sitting back here going, but that's not me. Wow. I'm going to leave this church, and I know what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go drink.
Right.
And it took me until, of course, we're going to go into this, my downfall. But
let's go ahead and get there. So you're fighting your demons. Okay. And here's the thing, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, many of us come to church and we're still fighting our demons on the outside. We're not really, I remember that ring being here, and I love how you express that. Yeah. Like, there's people making decisions to fight. Yet yes. I don't have the courage right now.
Yes.
To fight.
Absolutely.
And so what happened to bring you to, what was your rock bottom? Ooh. What happened to bring you to the point to where you surrendered?
Rock bottom. Here we go. It was actually my poor mom's birthday. He was actually sitting right here in this front row. And I started out, got into an argument. Something happened where I felt like they were both kind of coming at me. And this is my mom's birthday. And I got up and I was like, you know what? I'm out. Mm-hmm. And I remember going through the neighborhood, going to one of my neighbor's houses, screaming out the window, which I did not know at the time, saying, I'm going to go to jail tonight.
Wow.
He said, man, you just left. Well, guess what?
You ended
My
up,
rock bottom, that night, I ended up in jail.
Wow. So you end up in jail. You kind of prophesied that you would end up in jail that night, and there you are. And you kind of created this. You're running from confrontation and responsibility, basically.
Absolutely.
And so tell me, so you're in jail that night. What happened to you in jail?
Well, for me, you're sitting in a jail cell. You got a lot of time to think.
Right.
Okay? You're just in a cell. You get out of the cell. It's all about basically you. So I had time to sit there and go, what am I going to do? I'm praying. Man, take this for me. I want to be a better father. I know I need to quit what I'm doing. I just know I need to stop.
Right.
And then the next day I'm sitting at a table. All of a sudden this guy just comes out of nowhere, sits at the table, and he just starts speaking to me. And I'm listening to him. I'm not saying much. And he's just like, man, this is it. You're a grown man. You're about to be 40 years old. Of course, I told him all this already. And he's like, you're a father. You need to be a better husband. And now I'm sitting in this jail cell going, where did this guy come from?
Yeah.
And I'm listening and I'm listening. And then I'm like, you know what? You're right. Now I just got to get out of here.
Right. And so God sends, he really answers your prayer.
Yes, he absolutely
like, God, help take this from me. And this stranger walks up and speaks life into you.
Big time.
And direction into you.
Yeah, and even asked if he can pray, and he did pray for me.
And he prayed for you.
You're right. Thank
Wow.
you.
So God puts you in a position to listen.
Yes.
Slows you down long enough so you can hear.
Yes.
And what's going on with you at that time, Stacy? I mean, so Brian ends up in jail. What's going on with you at that same time?
So after he left, this was unfortunately nothing new. You know, this had happened many times before, but that night, something felt very different. And that night he didn't come home. And he always came home at some point, but that night he didn't. And I knew something was terribly wrong. And so I spent a lot of the night doing what I always do, staying up, you know, and as a wife, you know, we had a lot of arguments and, you know, there was a lot of, you know, fear and inconsistency in my life, you know, being the wife of an alcoholic and a mother. And so that night I spent a lot of time, you know, trying to figure out where he was, calling friends, and checking arrest records to the point where I was calling hospitals to see if he had been admitted.
Wow.
And a good friend said to me, she said, you know what, Stacy, nothing's going to change if you don't do something different. And I was so angry at that statement at the time because I didn't understand it. And I was like, what do you mean? Nothing will change if I don't do something different. Why do I have to change? I'm not the problem. I'm not the one with the problem. And I sat with that for a good amount of time. And I kept repeating that to myself. Nothing's going to change if I don't do something different. And then I realized, well, I have been repeating the same actions over and over and over again, expecting a different result.
Insanity.
What is that? Yeah, the definition of insanity, right?
Yes.
So, so the next morning, I woke up and checked records one more time. I still had to get up and go to work the next day. I still had to get kids ready for school the next day. And my search for my husband came to an end when I realized he had, in fact, been arrested. So I said, you know what? I got to go to work. I got myself to work. I went to school, or the kids went to school. And later on that day, he attempted to call. And I wouldn't answer. Wow. I was in a very dark place where I just wasn't ready. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to talk to him. I wasn't ready yet.
Right.
And he called again and, you know, begged and pleaded with me to come get him. And I said, you know what? This isn't my problem. I'm safe and the kids are safe and we're where we need to be. You figure this out. And I refused to go get him. And so a couple days went by. And he called again, and I stayed home from work that day because I just couldn't take it anymore. Right. I was at such a loss. I had just learned that he had now lost his job that he had.
So he's in jail, lost his job.
Yeah.
And the clock is ticking.
And the clock is ticking. And ultimately, everything is on me to make a decision. And so I called out from work, and I got the kids to school, and I came home, and I fell to my knees. Here I am again, on my knees, in my kitchen, praying to God. I don't know what to do anymore. Please, I just take this from me. I don't know what to do anymore. And so in that moment, I realized I need to call my church. I've heard that you can do that. I've heard that you can call,
and there's someone will talk to you.
Someone will talk to you. So I called the church, and I'm hysterically crying. I'm surprised the girl on the other end could understand a single word I was saying. But she directed me to a pastor, and fortunately, she was able to and agreed to meet with me immediately. And I drove to the church, and she sat with me for over an hour and talked with me. And the things she said to me were so uplifting and helped me to refocus. And I knew when I left there that I needed to speak the truth in love. I needed to tell him how I felt. And she said something that was really scary to me that no one had ever said to me. She said, "He may never stop." Wow. Are you willing to accept that? And I didn't know how to answer that question.
Wow. So you're walking out of Grace a little stunned, but you're hopeful.
Yeah.
Right? And so how does Brian get back into, hey, I'm a husband of 30 years. How does he get out of the doghouse and get back into your good graces again? I mean, how does that happen?
So I knew going home that what I had to do. I knew ultimately, and I was fighting it for days. I knew I was going to have to get him out. I couldn't keep, lying to the kids about where Daddy was any longer. I couldn't keep this up anymore.
Right.
So I went and got him, brought him home, and I left immediately to go to an Al-Anon meeting. And if some of you don't know what an Al-Anon meeting is, it is meetings for family members and spouses of alcoholics. It's a support group. And so I had been going to these meetings for a little while, and so I knew I needed to go. I ran right to the meeting and then came home afterwards so I could get some more mental clarity before I could face him. And that night, he was begging me because I couldn't look at him. I just couldn't. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't talk to him. And he begged me to listen. And he had something really important to tell me. And I never heard him like that before. There was something different about him and the tone of his voice. And I knew I needed to listen to what he had to say.
Wow. So Brian, just tell us, I mean, what did you say in that moment? And tell us about your journey after that conversation.
Well, for me, it was, I knew in the jail cell that I was done. I mean, I'm 39 years old. My 40th birthday this is August. My 40th birthday was in November. So I knew then, I got it. This is it. There's no way I can go back. I'd lose everything. I knew I was going to lose. I actually already thought I lost my family. Sitting in that jail cell, you think a lot. And I was like, when I get out of here, I know I was going to be homeless. I was going to be on the street. God only knows what would have happened to me. But I knew that I had to come home and tell her what happened. And ever since that first day, I started going to AA meetings. And I went for a solid year and didn't say a word. I just listened. And I sat in that back row, kind of like I did when I was young. And I was just like, you know what, Brian, let's just hear. And of course, now you're hearing what appears to be the same story that I was going through over and over, but in many different ways. And it was really something to sit in that room for a solid year and not speak. But I got it. I finally realized you know, that's
That
it.
was it.
That's
Yeah,
it.
how many years has it been?
7.5.
7.5 years, guys. Let's give it up. Come on now. You know, what I hear in your story is this, man, it's important to live in community. You found community in Al-Anon. You know, you found community through AA. We have Celebrate Recovery, guys, here at Grace Family Church. That's for some of you that may be struggling with an addiction. We have Celebrate Recovery, so if you want more information about that, definitely. So you're in Christ, you're baptized, you're in church, you're in community. So it's been 10 years. How have you connected? I mean, what do you do here? I mean, one of our values is serving others. Where do you serve?
I've been an usher, like I said, for 10 years, and I have rarely ever missed a Saturday. So I'm usually here every Saturday. A lot of people probably like, yeah, that guy comes every single week. But and I've been through both our reunions, and it's just beautiful, man. I just can't like tell people enough. I mean, for me, ushering, I mean, a lot of people might not be into ushering. For me, I'm that kind of guy. I'm a friendly guy. I like to be outgoing. I like to greet people, I guess you could say. So I knew for me that you know, of course, the first 3 years I was going through the motions, but now ever since then, I can't wait to get in here and hear the word.
And here's something interesting about, what made you take a step to become an usher? I love this part of the story.
Well, for me, it was, I got to give a shout out to my friend Eddie, who's over in the Atlanta Lakes campus. We used to work out at the LA Fitness together, and he would always be like, hey, man, you know, you'd probably be a good usher. And I was like, all right. And needless to say, it started out with me in this corner over here. Right. You know, you start out in the very bottom kind of thing. And I
no matter where you are at Grace Family Church, you're not at the bottom. Okay, but keep going. You know what I'm saying? But you're in the dark corner.
Yeah, I'm in the dark corner. You know, and then needless to say, you know, years go by. I'm up there, and me and Eddie are hanging out, and you know, now Eddie's over at Atlanta Lakes, and here I am, you know, been ushering ever since, and you know, I got my wife here who's actually on the worship team. So it's special when you can be an usher, and I can get in here early, and I can watch her on that stage, Ralph, and be like, man, this is where you should have been this whole time, my friend.
Oh, I hear that. All right, bro, come on. I like that. You ministering that thing to me. Okay, here we go. So Stacy, tell us how have you connected? Where are you serving?
So I didn't start off where I am now. I started off in Promised Land. So it used to be called Promised Land before it became Clubhouse.
Old school Promised Land.
Old school Promised Land. So I saw what good care they took of our daughter. You know, she was 1-year-old at the time in the infant room, and she went to the 1-year-old room, and what good care they took of her. And I was a teacher for very young children, preschool age children at the time. And I said, you know what, I want to do that. And so I started off volunteering. Then shortly after that, was hired as a teacher here. And then in about 2017, about 3 years ago, I felt tremendously called to be part of the worship team, and that's where I am today.
Wow. So, man, thank you guys so much. Can we just clap it up for their faithful service? Yeah. And so, you know, I love the Clubhouse. That's one of my favorite ministries because we create environments for the kids, but we also make sure that the parents, a lot of times, you know, they don't have that distraction of a kid and they can get ministered to. So thank you so much for that. And if you're here, you're thinking, because there's a lifeline, guys, within Grace Family Church, whether it's groups, you know, some of you guys are in groups, and man, that's your lifeline and that's your community. But also when we serve, we create community, and that's been true for your family for the past 10 years. And so I love the way our senior pastor says it, find your tribe. You know, it's 2021, find your tribe. You know, for many of us, we just got to take that next step. And so how has that affected your family? So we talked about growing up and, you know, not knowing Christ. How has this decision and the transformation of Christ and now serving, how does that affect your family, your family now?
Well, our children, they've only known this church and so this is their family, you know, this is their church family. Our youngest daughter, Lily, who was a 1-year-old at the time, is now 11. Wow. And she is part of United Middle School, and she also serves in the zone. And then our other two boys, Chase and Landon, they don't serve, but in a specific area just yet. But they have served and volunteered at our Summer X programs, and they really, just recently they're old enough to go to Man Event with their dad, so they're really enjoying that as well.
Man Event.
Yeah. And then our oldest son, who no longer lives with us, he is a U.S. Coast Guard.
Wow, man. Let's give it up for come on now, serving our country. Yeah.
And he's now married with 2 children of his own.
Awesome, man. Do we have a picture of this family? I mean, can we get a family picture? Boom, there it is. Look at that beautiful family, guys. All right. Well, look, hey, thank you guys so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Are you encouraged? I'm reminded of the verse, again, Revelation 12:11, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony. Truly, we need the blood of the Lamb to overcome, man. We need the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ to hold on to, and that is our salvation. But also, don't downplay the power of your story. Don't downplay the power of what God did in you. And as we were preparing for this weekend, I thought about over and over, the Bible is full of people who had a story, whether it's the woman at the well, whether it's the guy that was blind and now I see. It's very simple. God did something in me, and if you have a moment, I would love to share it with you. But I also want to point out this to you guys, and this is what I thought about. It's the power of an invitation. When I hear their story, I hear about a Katie, a kindergarten mom, that would just say, hey, would you join me? And she did it with gentleness and respect. And God used that in order for them to be here. Or rather, it's a guy sitting in a prison, in a jail cell. And he sees something and God sends him and he says, hey, look, I see something in you. There's more in you than what you're showing right now. It's all about the invitation. And I can't help but think about this, guys. And we're going to bring this up on the screen. In Matthew 11, Jesus says this. He gives us an invitation. He says, come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and you'll find rest for your souls. That's the great invitation. And maybe you're here this weekend and you're saying, Ralph, you know what? Man, I needed to know that there's space for me and there's room for me to come to Christ. And maybe you're dealing with some demons. Maybe you're dealing with marital problems. Maybe you're dealing with whatever the case may be. Maybe you came in here with some stuff. And I'm here to tell you there's an invitation for you. Jesus says come. And so with that said, I just want to pray for all of us. And as we bow our heads across this room. Father, we thank you for the power of a story, God. And the greatest part of any story is the climax. And the climax in every story, God, no matter who you are, is the day that we meet you. The day we find ourselves kneeling at the cross and surrendering the best we know how. And that doesn't mean that everything is fixed. That doesn't mean that all is, finally well, but it does mean that it's well with our soul. And so maybe you're here watching online, or maybe you're sitting here right now and you're saying, Ralph, you know what? I want to accept that eternal, everlasting invitation. And it's as simple as this, guys. It's as simple as just coming. And the way that we come to him is we do a simple prayer, and this is what happened in my life. And I would just like to lead all of us in this prayer. And if you would just repeat after me, just say, Lord Jesus, thank you for the invitation. I accept that invitation. The best I know how, I accept the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ. Forgive me for my sins. Transform my life. Come into my heart today. In Jesus' name.
Thanks for watching today. We hope you enjoyed the service. And let me be the first to wish you a Happy New Year from Grace Family Church. See you next time.